Hey guys, welcome to What's Up With That Bike. This is our newest custom. This bike's called the Mescalero. What is the Mescalero? Is it called the Mescalero? The Mescalero. The Mezcal. Oh, this bike is called the El Camino. The El Camino means the way, the path, how you're gonna get there. So for this bike, the path was to take a stock Indian chieftain and tear it completely apart, rip the motor out of it, and build a frame around it. We used a lot of vintage Indian parts. Like we use an original Indian neck, an original Indian fork complete. So this is all 45, 46 Indian chief here, as well as the gas tanks. You can see how the gas tank is molded into the cast frame. And what was super difficult about this project was figuring out how to solder all the tubes into the frame. So Aaron Boss, our fabricator, took a lot of time and energy to figure out how to properly braze the brand new tubes into the old frame castings. So you could see all the work here in the frame with all the bronze soldering. Aaron took a lot of time and energy to make that stuff look really good, but not only look really good, to work really good, because of course making something look cool is important, but making it work better is even more important. And that's what this bike was really about, was how do we kind of capture that original Indian vibe, but give it a little bit more performance. So you can see in the back is a race shock. And we used a race shock off one of our old race bikes. And so we mounted it pretty much like an FTR. So it's kind of like an Indian FTR meets an Indian Chief meets a 1946 Indian, complete with our RSD traction flat track wheels front and back, and Dunlop flat track tires front and rear as well. We built so many parts around this bike, and we built so many parts around the vintage portion of this motorcycle. The handlebars are also directly off vintage 1946 Indian. We use these vintage levers. A lot of these Indian parts came from Kiwi Mike over at Kiwi Indian. Mike builds a really beautiful vintage Indian motor, like a 1946. It's the same motor I have in my dad's chopper. Obviously we used a new motor for this bike, but we got a lot of the parts and a lot of the support from Mike, because Mike really understands those bikes. But a lot of this stuff, outside of the neck, this stuff was handmade. Back then there wasn't like a side mount shock seat post frame piece, so Aaron fabricated all this, and Saddleman did the seat for us too. So I actually pulled this old vintage Indian motorcycle logo off of a wallet that I had. Probably the craziest modification to the motor was we got rid of fuel injection. So this bike now runs points, and it runs just a standard ignition and a carburetor, a Mikuni carburetor, rather than the fuel injection setup. This is a hydraulic brake caliper, and we jammed the master cylinder, old square PM master that we jammed down below here, mounted in between the tanks, just to keep the bars very old school, no hydraulic master cylinders or anything like that. This is a repop Indian air filter piece that we got from Kiwi Mike here. Everything is aged, antiqued, and like there's zero paint on this bike. Everything has been stripped off of it. It's not the easiest thing to do, to turn a modern machine into something that most people would think is a vintage bike, and you get the bonus and benefit of it just being a really good riding bike all around altogether. So that's the bike, enough talking about it. Let's go take it for a spin, see how it rides. Josh, you designed these gloves? Sick! In an old frame, in a 1946 frame. Thanks, man. This is the second time I've gotten to ride this bike. It really does feel like an old bike because the controls are all old. But underneath it, you've got this ripping Indian 111 horsepower that is just so much fun to ride. Like this Indian horsepower, get rid of the ECU, get rid of the electronic ignition, get rid of all that stuff. This thing is turned into such a lively, fun bike. You can just like pop the clutch and the thing just spins the rear tire. The El Camino accomplished its goals. I mean, this is, it's a retro rod, you know, an Indian retro rod. Back to the future, baby.